I haven't paid too much attention to Toronto's mayor's race, mainly because it's so depressing. I mean, I've been a defender of Rob Ford in the past for two reasons. He did what he said he'd do by reining in what he calls the gravy train, that group of bureaucrats and lawyers and lobbyists and union bosses who just burrow into taxpayers' wallets and you can't get them out. Well, Rob Ford got them out. I love that my garbage is picked up in Toronto every week by a privatized contractor. When I see that green truck and know it's not the extortionate government union that forced a summertime garbage strike a few years ago, I have a little moment of Toronto pride. And the second reason I liked Ford was that Ford's enemies are the right enemies to have. The hard left Toronto Star, the media party with its double standards when it comes to politicians' private lives, the raw class hatred that the fancy people in the media have for a schlub like Rob Ford, and that they obviously have for the rest of us who sound or look or think like Rob Ford. When they mock him for being fat or having problems, I know they're mocking us too. But by God, he's damaged now, and largely by himself. John Tory isn't an inspiring choice either. He's a liberal's idea of a conservative, which means two things. He isn't very conservative, and more importantly, he loses. He lost the provincial election as the PC leader a few elections ago, which is why the media like him. They like conservatives who lose. And even if he wins, he's not going to take on the gravy train the way Ford would. But those are the best two conservative candidates with any hope of winning. And they're splitting each other's vote. Because the left is smart in Toronto. For 3 years, they've despised Rob Ford, seethed against him, plotted against him, sued him, spied on him, paid cash for hidden camera videos of him, even videos taken in private homes. They've done everything. I don't know if it'll work to dislodge him. I give them about a 50-50 chance. But the one thing they did right was to unite the left in this election, while the right has split between Ford and Tory. All the lefties have coalesced around Olivia Chow. She's a former New Democrat MP, Jack Layton's widow, but every Liberal in town is rooting for her too. So with two nominal Conservatives running, Chow could win 40% of the vote, maybe even winning with as few as 35%. That could put her in first place. So you've got Kathleen Wynne as the hard left-wing premier, doubling down on her tax and spend and waste agenda. Credit rating agencies are already warning of an imminent downgrade. Last month, Ontario lost more jobs again. It's been 7 straight years that Ontario's unemployment rate is above the national average. Ontario's debt is twice as much as California's. And then there's the corruption and scandal. Don't get me started on that. So imagine Kathleen Wynne as a socialist premier, really the Unite the Left candidate. And imagine if Olivia Chow were to win as mayor on top of that, the Unite the Left candidate in Toronto, with promises to undo whatever good Rob Ford did to tax and spend and regulate on the city level. You don't think great cities and great provinces can be ruined? You don't think it could ever happen to Toronto or Ontario, the engine of the Canadian economy for so long? Well, I'm sure they said that in Detroit too, which 50 years ago was the strongest city in America, the city with the best economy, the highest wages. You don't have to be that dramatic. Just look at Montreal before the Parti Québécois took over in the 1970s and scared all the money and businesses away. And look at Quebec now. It's no coincidence that the Bank of Montreal moved its headquarters from Montreal to Toronto the year after the PQ became the government of Quebec. I'm the only idiot in Canada moving from the West to Toronto. Great. I mean, I love the people here, which is why I'm so sad for what's happening to them. I don't even think most Ontarians notice that their have-not province being bailed out now by Saskatchewan and Newfoundland to have provinces. I think Ontarians sort of notice, like they notice the traffic in Toronto is bad and made worse by empty bike lanes and empty streetcar lanes put in spitefully by Anti-Car City Hall. I think Ontarians sort of notice that life is a bit tougher, a bit more expensive each month as they pay their power bills, made artificially higher by the forced experiment with costly wind turbines, again, done spitefully and politically, while there's a power blackout just about every other month in Toronto. I think people realize things aren't getting better in Ontario, but they haven't clued in that Toronto's in decline. And it's in decline because Torontonians have made a choice. Provincially and soon municipally, they have chosen decline. It's a choice, you know. You can also choose to break out of it, like both Saskatchewan and Newfoundland recently did. But let me close with a clip from last night's mayor's debate in Toronto. They were talking about the gravy train, of course. Ford's whole mantra is to stop the gravy train. Olivia Chow has never met a tax or government expenditure she didn't like. And then out of the blue, Olivia Chow said this.
Mr. Tory and Mr. Ford, don't let facts get in your way. Don't let truth get in your way. Because you know what? I'm not a millionaire like both of you.
Now, we know what she was trying to do. Because she's a socialist and a class warfare specialist. That is, instead of talking about how to lift up people who are poor, instead of talking about creating jobs for the jobless, she prefers to demonize those who aren't poor, those who do earn a living. She uses envy and greed and jealousy as her political weapons. So to her, being a millionaire is a dirty word. It's an insult because in her worldview, Rob Ford and John Tory must have gotten their money in some immoral way. I mean, all rich people do, right? She's a bigot that way, and she's a bit of a race warrior too. Remember this online chat that she had a few months ago? She was asked how she would be different from Toronto's last socialist mayor, David Miller. Open question, softball question, and here's what she said. Take a look. This is what she did on her online chat. She said, "I'm not male. I'm not white. Want to start there?" Are you kidding? That's how you got, you're asked what you stand for, what makes you different. And you play the race card and the gender card? Out of what? Sympathy or something? Or a racial identity politics? So you think maybe people should vote for you because of your race? Or you say, well, that's your best selling point. How are you different from David Miller? I'm a woman of color. You really think people should vote along racial lines? Should whites vote for whites? Should men vote for men? Or should they vote for a woman of color, but only women should vote for women and minorities? What are you saying? I mean, racist much? Sexist much? Why, yes, racist, sexist, classist. Now, it is true that she is a Chinese Canadian and a woman. But what about her comment that unlike the evil white men, John Tory and Rob Ford, she's not a millionaire? Look at this again.
Mr. Tory and Mr. Ford, don't let facts get in your way. Don't let truth get in your way. Because you know what? I'm not a millionaire like both of you.
Really? Because according to the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, Chow's MP's pension alone is worth about $1.2 million. This is their report. That's an asset. It's worth more than $1 million right there. And of course, Olivia Chow was married to the late Jack Layton. She would have been eligible for benefits from him as his widow. And then there's Layton's larger estate, his will, his life insurance policy. He was a millionaire too, born that way, son of a millionaire. And when the two of them were married, MPs together, their combined income from Parliament alone was close to $400,000 a year. That was just their income. And then there were all the perks and expenses. Even the left-wing Toronto Star was shocked with the mini gravy train this husband and wife team had set up for themselves. Here's one story that the left-wing Star ran, that the two of them, Layton and Chow, billed more than $1 million each year as expenses. How do you do that? How on earth do two MPs who live together, who are in Toronto, so it's not like they're traveling to Ottawa from the Arctic or something, how do they bill $1 million a year in expenses? That's on top of their $400,000 in salaries. And of course, both of them were former city councillors in Toronto with all the perks that paid. And of course, they took plenty on the side too, like when they both lived in subsidized public housing, paying less than market rents. They're millionaires, but they lived in public housing subsidized by you, the taxpayer. Oh, and then there's all the little extras, like when the CBC actually paid Olivia Chow cash for the rights to tell the Jack Layton story. Imagine that. Do you think they paid Brian Mulroney for the rights to do stories about him? Olivia Chow is a millionaire. She pretends to be a class warrior, but she's a one-percenter. She claims to be with the little guy, but she's actually been taxing the little guy and living off his income her whole life. She spent her whole life on the public teat. She's never signed a paycheck. Oh, but she sure knows how to cash them. Take a look.
Mr. Tory and Mr. Ford, don't let facts get in your way. Don't let truth get in your way. Because you know what? I'm not a millionaire like both of you.
Oh, but you are a millionaire, sweetness. But now we know one more thing about you, too. You're a damn liar. Which, if recent history's any guide, means you're a shoo-in with Ontario voters.